Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Baldwin, the leader of the free world, soon to be the leader of the free lunch, for Republican senators at least. A short time from now, President Trump will be hosting Republican senators at the White House to figure out essentially what the heck they're going to do next. It comes after the revised GOP health care bill in the Senate collapsed and after a very disappointed president, those are his words, said that he is now willing to just let Obamacare fail. But maybe this lunch date will fix everything. The president sending out this statement earlier on Twitter. The Republicans never discuss how good their health care bill is, and it will get even better at lunchtime. The Dems scream death as Obamacare dies. Let's go to CNN's Kaitlan Collins at the White House. No laughing matter. This is life and death for many people when we're talking about health care. But talk to me about this lunch. What are we expecting? What are you hearing, Kaitlan?
Well, we're hearing from the White House that they are expecting about 95% of those senators who were invited here today for lunch to show up. They hope that this is more of a strategy session where, like you said, they can figure out what they're going to do next. The question is, what strategy are they going to pursue? They're meeting with a president who has publicly advocated for several different strategies, including repeal and replace, and then repeal, then replace at a later date, and letting Obamacare fail, which is what President Trump brought up yesterday during a meeting here at the White House. It will also likely be a venting session for these senators who don't think Trump has done enough to publicly advocate for this bill. Though he loves rallies, he never held any or gave any solo speeches dedicated to this health care bill, leaving more of the legwork up to Vice President Mike Pence. Now, Donald Trump did host a dinner at the White House on Monday night with 7 senators, but it raised some eyebrows because those senators all were in support of the bill. Now, as you know, it was during that dinner that the health care bill essentially collapsed when Senators Lee and Moran came out in opposition against it. Donald Trump said that that surprised him, though it didn't surprise many other people. It'll be interesting to see what happens today because Donald Trump often distanced himself from the party, calling them the Republicans. And today he said that the Republicans have to fulfill the promise they made to the American people to fix health care. Now, the White House said that this isn't him distancing himself from Republicans, but noted that their promise to fix health care comes long before his. Kate?
The Republicans. It's like a strange version of the Ohio State, which I always take issue with in and of itself. Great to see you, Kaitlan. Thank you so much. Joining me right now, CNN political commentator, former communications director at the RNC, and also a former Top Hill staffer, Doug Heye. John Salop is here. He was chief of staff to former Senator Max Baucus, who helped usher through Obamacare in the Senate. Hi, guys. Great to have you here. Thank you. I'm a little bit confused. Kaitlan lays it out. Forget the Ohio State. We'll get to that later. Repeal and replace. Repeal now, replace later, or let Obamacare fail, and then we'll figure it out. The reporting now is that they're going to go into this lunch, Doug, and the message from the president is inaction is not an option. Which of the menu of those three are we at this point? I'm quite confused.
Yeah, I think that everybody's pretty confused. We're not at plan B or plan C here. We're at about plan Q. And until we figure out some direction from the president, we're not going to know anything more. I think if you look back at the dinner that Republican senators had, they'll tell you Donald Trump spent a lot more time talking about the parade in Paris than he did health care. And we need to see a change in language and action from the White House, and not talking about they, but talking about we. Moving things forward and proactively talking about this. The absence of Trump's voice in this meant that there was a vacuum, which means it was filled with bad CBO numbers and bad process stories. We can't do anything if that doesn't change.
Well, and in the lack of we, you've often heard with President Trump when it comes to things, when things are not going well legislatively, when it comes to his agenda. John, there were a lot of lunches and meetings at the White House leading up to the passage of Obamacare when you're working through it. What do you think could come from this meeting if 95% of the Republican senators show up?
Yeah, I don't think very much is going to come from this meeting. And I can't see what would have changed from the other day when the Senate Republicans had their lunch after Moran and Lee came out.
Yeah, just yesterday, right?
Kill the bill, right? So hard to see what the president can offer at this point. I agree with Doug completely. Presidential leadership is essential for major pieces of legislation like this. And President Obama, worked really hard to stay on message, to bring members along, to, try to shape the bill in ways without being too dominant over the process. But at the end of the day, the other problem with this legislation is it's just not a very good bill. And I don't think you can message your way around this. There's not, you know, there's only so much the president can do with a bill that's going to take away insurance from 23 million people.
Well, here's one thing about it, at least as of yesterday. We'll see where the president lands today. As of yesterday, the president said that he would be fine with just letting Obamacare fail. And if it did, he wasn't going to own it. To remind our viewers, this is what he said.
But we'll just let Obamacare fail. We're not going to own it. I'm not going to own it. I can tell you the Republicans are not going to own it.
I just want to make a point on that one before I get your take. That is a total contradiction to what the president ran on when he basically, one of his strong points was he's from outside and he's the only guy or gal you can send to Washington to fix this problem, fix the system. Just this. Listen to this from the convention.
I have joined the political arena so that the powerful can no longer beat up on people who cannot defend themselves. Nobody knows the system better than me. Which is why I alone can fix it.
So what does this failure right now prove?
Well, I think it should, if things work, give us some hope. If you go back in 2014, Republicans struggled to put any kind of legislation, not even legislation, language together on healthcare bill, on a healthcare replacement. I worked on it for 6 months, and we got nowhere. And the only dynamic that's different between today and last year when we struggled and 5 years ago when we struggled is that we have a President Trump. And we own this because we own the House and the Senate and the White House. If we're not all working together with an all-hands-on-deck mentality, we're not going to be able to do this. And that leadership has to come from the president.
As of this moment, it doesn't seem like it is. When he says, we will not own it, I will not own it. What did you make when you heard the president say that yesterday?
Well, I mean, obviously, he hasn't been a great supporter of the members of his own party all along the way, right? He called the House bill mean. He often tries to shift blame away from failures of his administration. But look, just because you control all the levers of government doesn't mean you have to do everything by yourself. Democrats, I think, genuinely want to work together with Republicans to fix some of the things in the Affordable Care Act, as long as that effort isn't designed to repeal the whole law. George W. Bush, even though when he came into office, he controlled the Senate and he controlled the House, reached out to Democrats on a whole host of priorities. I worked on the 2001 tax cut bill. Okay, there were,
But don't be Pollyanna, my friend John. I think some Democrats would truly enjoy to see whatever the Republicans end up doing, good, bad, or ugly, fail, and so they can use it in 2018.
Look, I'm not being Pollyannish about this. There's no way Democrats will ever agree to a bill that repeals the Affordable Care Act at all, full stop. So if those are the terms of the negotiation, Democrats are going to be hard-nosed about that, and they should be. However, if it means working with Republicans to make a few minor tweaks so that people's insurance markets operate more effectively, I think Democrats are game for that.
Democrats are going to have to lose the term minor in terms of the tweaks if they're going to get with
This is
Republicans.
about more than
That's up to
health care, though.
Republicans.
This is about more than health care. This is about whether or not a Republican Party owning the government can actually govern.
Well,
we are having problems in a lot of different areas.
Let's see if they will first just own health care when they come out of this lunch. Great to see you guys. Thanks so much. Turning now to new questions in the Russia investigation. First, it was Jared, now Ivanka. What did Ivanka Trump know, and did she disclose it? Some Democrats are now calling on the FBI to review what the first daughter put on her security clearance application when she joined the administration as a White House advisor. This comes, of course, amid the ever-evolving explanations coming from her brother and the changing disclosures, updated disclosures coming from her husband after their meetings with Russians. Let's go to CNN White House reporter Jeremy Diamond, who is following this side of the story. Jeremy, what is the basis at this point for these calls from Democrats to look into Ivanka's security clearance?
Well, Congressman Don Beyer, a Democrat, is leading a group of 22 Democratic members of Congress calling on the FBI to review Ivanka Trump's security clearance application for potential omissions. The omissions they're talking about are in particular about foreign government contacts. That's a part of the application, and it not only asks that you disclose your foreign government contacts, but those of any immediate family members. Cue Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., who, of course, we learned last week had this meeting in June 2016 with a Russian lawyer who Donald Trump Jr. believed was representing the Russian government to provide dirt, essentially, on Hillary Clinton. So let me just read you a part of this letter from Congressman Don Beyer and these 22 Democrats. It says, "We are concerned that Ivanka Trump may have engaged in similar deception. The high standard to which we hold public servants, particularly senior advisors to the President of the United States, requires that these questions be raised and promptly answered." So Democrats have turned up the heat on Jared Kushner, calling for his security clearance to be revoked. Now they're also turning up the heat on Ivanka Trump. The White House and Ivanka Trump's attorney have yet to respond to CNN's request for comment. Kate?
All right, so you have that. There's now also more coming out about the 8th person who attended the meeting with Donald Trump Jr. at Trump Tower and his links to a congressional investigation. Not just a congressional investigation, but a federal investigation into Russian money laundering. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. Well, we found out just recently that Ike Keveladze is the 8th person who attended that meeting. And Keveladze was actually previously linked to a congressional investigation. He was linked to bank accounts, essentially, that were being investigated by a congressional panel with regards to money laundering. Keveladze has denied any connection to money laundering efforts at the time. He called the GAO, the Government Accountability Office's investigation, a witch hunt. Familiar words that we're hearing now today, again, from the President of the United States, of course. But Senator Carl Levin, a Democrat who was on that congressional panel that was investigating that, has just put out a statement on Facebook. Let me read it to you in part. He says, quote, "As GAO reported, Keveladze established some 2,000 U.S. corporations and bank accounts for a number of them. The owners of those accounts then moved some $1.4 billion through those accounts. Keveladze claimed he did all this without knowing for whom he was doing it." And Carl Levin also goes on to call Keveladze, in a sense, the poster child of that practice of money laundering. So clearly some more questions being raised about Keveladze, who is the 8th person in that room with Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort during that meeting at Trump Tower. Kate?
Very interesting. Jeremy, thanks so much for bringing it to and laying it out. I really appreciate it. Joining me now on this to discuss is former U.S. Attorney Michael. Moments from now, the president will be playing host for a meal with some serious high stakes. He's invited all Republican senators over for lunch at the White House. The topic, health care. So is this going to be more of a postmortem or more of a fresh start at this point? Where do things go from here? Joining me right now, Republican Congressman Michael Burgess, who helped craft the House health care bill that passed in the spring. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Congressman, how hopeful are you that they're going to come out of this lunch, Senate Republicans and the president, on one message on health care?
Oh, I don't know if that's a possibility, but I think it's good that they are meeting, and I don't know that the final answer will be in today. Leader McConnell has said that there will be a vote on a motion to proceed next week. I think we know at this point how important it is to the president and vice president, although it has been difficult to get here. Here we are, right on the precipice of getting this accomplished, and I believe the president is going to be today all in talking to the senators about how important it is to move this along.
That may be the message today, but just yesterday, Congressman, the president says that he made very clear that he was okay with just not doing anything and letting Obamacare fail. Are you comfortable with that position?
No, the fight's not over, and I believe the senators have a duty. I know the senators have a duty to go to the floor and vote. Now, it may not be a successful vote, but my opinion, they are obligated. They can't do this by mailing in a press release. They have to go to the floor of the Senate. They have to be recorded, yes or no. And you saw the editorial of the Wall Street Journal this morning. Mm-hmm. Does any senator in that group want to be the one to whom it is forever affixed the title, "This is the senator that saved Obamacare," after running election after election saying they were going to get rid of it? That's a tough sell for someone to carry that forward in their political career.
They seem to all know the pressure that is on them, why it's so tough to make these decisions right now. But on the president's role here, you say that is, you do not agree with the president that letting Obamacare fail, just letting Obamacare fail is an option. But also,
let's back up. I wouldn't say that I disagree with the president, but I don't think that's the option that's on the table right now. I think the options on the table is, do we proceed with this?
Do you think the president's right when he says that we might be to a place that you would be okay with not doing anything and letting Obamacare fail?
I think the president does hold some cards in this that the average senator or the average House member does not hold, and that is the decision to continue funding what are called cost-sharing reduction payments. That's about $7 billion a year. Remember, the House sued President Obama because those were not appropriated funds. Right. The court case was put on hold for a little while the new administration got up to speed. But now the decision month by month as to whether or not those payments occur, that is out of the White House. So they have some leverage there, and I won't say that what I think or whether or not they've talked to me about it or whether or not they would use that leverage, but that is leverage that is available to the executive branch, and I think they're aware of that.
Right, but isn't that different than letting it fail, and isn't that actively trying to push it to fail?
Oh, look, it's all about negotiation, and you make your best case. The president is known for being a closer. The Senate and even the House are not known for its ability to close a deal. The president is. I'll give him the space he needs to negotiate this.
Well, let me ask you about this one then, Congressman. The president also says that if this fails, Republicans won't own it. I won't own it, he said. Didn't you all take ownership of this when you won control of both chambers of Congress and the White House?
Wait a minute. Remember who you're talking to. I'm a House Republican. We get blamed for everything. So I fully understand who's going to, if there's a victory, we get very little credit. If there's blame, we pretty much get it all.
So on that one, the president is a little off base.
No, I wouldn't say he's off base, but I will just tell you,
he says he's not going to own it, Congressman.
Well, he may not. But as my experience,
owns this too?
My experience as a House member is, you guys will do a very good job of making sure that the House Republicans own whatever. If it's bad, the House Republicans will own it. If it's successful, there'll be a million people that'll line up to take credit for it.
Oh, but Congressman, do not put this on me that I'm going to be putting blame on you. This is about Republicans.
It's reality. It's reality. I've lived it. I've lived it for a decade.
The Senate. The Republicans have control of the House and the Senate and the White House, and you say that the president will not own this if this fails?
Well, the president did not cause this problem. Remember, this problem was caused by Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, and Barack Obama back in 2009 and 2010 when they pushed on a party line vote a reformation of 1/6 of the American economy.
Right.
It has been tough sledding ever since then, trying to fix that. But I don't think you can say now at the 11th hour this is all on the executive branch. It started with the executive branch in 2009, but the president's only been on the job for 6 months. No, I agree with him. I don't think that is his ownership. As a House member, yeah, I get it. We have run on this in 2010, 2014, 2016.
But he ran on it too, Congressman.
The deliverable is ours, and we need to deliver for the president. I feel that very acutely, that the president needs us to do our job, and the House did do its job. I want the Senate to do its job as well. Again, they can't mail this in with a press release. They've got to go on the floor of the Senate and be recorded.
I hear you, Congressman, but the president was more than happy to own health care when you had just passed, when the House did act and had passed its version of health care and held a pep rally at the White House. The president seemed more than happy to own it then.
He was great. He was grateful for the House's participation, and I was grateful for the president acknowledging the work that the House had done. It was hard. As someone who sat in the committee through the 28-hour markup and then sat through the Rules Committee on another 18-hour markup, this was hard. For all those people out there who said, well, you weren't really repealing Obamacare, that wasn't the tone in those markups when we went through this process.
I just want to get you on this one point, Congressman. He's not shirking responsibility when he says, I'm the president, but I'm not going to own it if a health care effort fails under my watch?
Well, you all will assign what you wish to assign.
Stop. Do not put this on me. I am asking you.
As a House member, I understand where the responsibility is, and it is with the members of the People's House and Senate.
Congressman, it's always great to have you on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up for us, a secret sit-down between the president and Vladimir Putin, and only 3 people know what was said at all, what they talked about. How unusual is this? Does it break any rules? Should it happen again? And why wasn't it revealed that they met for a second time? 2 world leaders. We'll be right back. Cavallazzi from that now infamous 2016 meeting. He's identified and he's being linked to this federal money laundering investigation. This was back in 2000 when this was all being investigated. Is Robert Mueller going to be looking into this?
You know, I think Bob Mueller actually will look into a lot of it, and these investigations take a long time, and some of this information will start to come out as that goes on. Hopefully not a lot. We don't want to have leaks in the investigation. But the problem with these explanations about the meeting, it's kind of like those little dolls that the Russians have that have, you open it up and there's another doll inside, and open that up, called a babushka doll. You know, that's sort of how this is. Every time we look into the meeting, we start investigating, we pop the top off and look in, another little Russian pops out. And that's where we are. The real problem, too, with the meeting is it's essentially a time when we gave the communists a win, gave Putin a win, both in the PR and in the counterintelligence world. I don't know what the administration was expecting when they were having this kind of meeting. You know, I don't know if they thought maybe that Putin would ride up in a 1947 tank wearing a fur hat and jump out at Trump Tower. But, you know, they send people in to set these things up. And essentially what we've done, or what the Trump team did, is they set up the administration for the potential for blackmail and extortion going down the road.
Well, let's focus, though, on one more time. I have another question on this 8th person in this investigation that we're now just learning about. I mean, the investigation looked at hundreds of U.S. bank accounts that were set up for corporations tied to Russia. More than $1 billion was funneled through them. And former Senator Carl Levin, he said that, as Jeremy laid out, that this guy became, in essence, a poster child for this kind of money laundering practice. He was never charged. He was never charged in this, but how serious is this?
Well, it's serious anytime you link somebody's name with potential money laundering. Obviously, that's a federal violation. And, you know, and it's especially serious since we don't have tax returns from the president to look to see if maybe he had interest or dealings with some of these corporations that were set up. Those things could tell us a lot, too. So, you know, the web continues to get thick, and we're just not getting the information from the administration that we need. And for some reason, they seem to be particularly protective and interested in having these ongoing discussions with the Russians.
On Bob Mueller, Dianne Feinstein, Senator Dianne Feinstein, she's the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee. She has said that Mueller has given them, on Judiciary, given them the green light to ask to bring in Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort to get them to testify about this meeting we've been talking about.
Right.
Can you read anything into that, Michael, about the investigation that Mueller's doing,
Sure.
that he is okay with them testifying?
Yeah, my guess is that he's probably got information from a cooperating source, and he may already have the information he needs about the meeting and is now willing to see whether or not statements come out that are contrary to what he thinks he can prove from other evidence. So, you know, if he was in the midst of wondering whether or not there was some nefarious intent in having the meeting, I doubt he would have given his okay. But at this point, my guess is maybe it's from Mike Flynn, maybe it's from somebody else. He's got information about what the intent was behind that meeting, probably well beyond even the emails that we've seen from Don Jr.
Well, we will stand by to find out. Great to see you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks now.
Coming up for us, new backlash and questions after we learned the president met with Vladimir Putin a second time at the G20 summit. Why didn't he bring another American with him? Any official? Any translator? And why didn't anybody know about this until now? I'll speak live with one former ambassador who says Putin's goal was just that, to get the president alone. Plus, the Russian lawyer at the center of the Trump Tower meeting says she will testify, but on one condition. That's ahead. And we're just getting word President Trump will be speaking any moment at the first meeting of the voter fraud commission that he set up. It's been embroiled in controversy since it began. You're looking at live pictures of the room. We'll bring you his comments live when they happen.
Election integrity is set to meet for the first time today. 4 top Democrats are calling on the commission's vice chairman, Chris Kobach, to step down. They actually wrote a letter to the Vice President Mike Pence, who's overseeing the commission, yesterday, saying Mr. Kobach has repeatedly claimed falsely that widespread voter fraud exists and advertises his work on the commission to promote his own campaign for governor of Kansas. If true, that could be a violation of a statute. These actions undermine the integrity of the commission and raise significant concerns of the commission will be used as a tool for voter suppression. Chris Kobach joins us now. It's good to have you on the show again, sir. What is your response to the criticism?
My response is it's ridiculous. First of all, they allege that somehow I'm not qualified because I've pointed out widespread voter fraud in my own state of Kansas. We're litigating our proof of citizenship requirement when you register to vote. And we've presented to a U.S. District Court 128 cases of non-citizens who've gotten on the voter rolls, and we've presented lots of other evidence or who have attempted to get on the voter rolls. And I'm simply saying that in my state, we have discovered a problem, but no commission has ever looked at it from a nationwide perspective. And so the other thing they claim is that somehow a commission studying this issue results in voter suppression. So to try to decipher that for you, I think they're saying that if a commission studies the problem in Washington, D.C., somebody out in California is going to decide not to vote some November. That doesn't even make sense. And in their letter, they don't even explain what is really a ludicrous argument.
They are... They're making their case. Of course, there's politics here, but I think that the general assertion is that you are looking for a problem in the name of suppression, and they're targeting you because you've tangled on this issue before with the ACLU and, frankly, recently lost. And you said more than that there were issues in your own state. You said, I think the president-elect is absolutely correct when he says the number of illegal votes cast exceeds the popular vote margin between him and Hillary Clinton. There is no basis for that, in fact.
Well, that was back in January or so when the president had made a statement similar to that. And my point was that, as I explained, if you took the quote in context and you read what was said before and after that, I was pointing to a study from the 2008 election that showed that several million non-citizens actually voted in that election. And I said it's conceivable if the same percentage in 2008 voted again today or in 2016 that you could have a similar result. So I was simply showing it was plausible.
The quote is inaccurate. I think the president-elect is absolutely correct when he says the number of illegal votes exceeds the popular vote margin between him and Clinton.
The point is that if you put it back in context, and then I went on to say there was a study that showed, and then I said if the same percentage of non-citizens in 2008 voted in 2016, then potentially you could have that issue. But let's make it clear. The commission is not set up to prove or disprove President Trump's claim. The commission is simply to put facts on the table. So if, as the Democrat members of Congress who wrote that letter contend there is no voter fraud, then we will make their case for them because the commission will come up with nothing. So the idea that you should stop the commission from even looking at a problem because there's going to be something we don't want the American public to see, that's outrageous. Let's just put the facts on the table and you can decide, Chris. Because, Chris, let's say that the facts come out and there are 1,000 cases of voter fraud in the whole country.
But what facts are going to come out? I mean, you are getting criticized because the information you're asking for either was seen as being overreaching or, according to experts, you couldn't find out whether or not there's a problem with the information you're asking for. You'd need other data to do a real analysis.
Okay, well, so let's be specific, Chris. The information we asked for is the publicly available voter rolls. You can walk in off the street in New York and ask that in your state. Any person watching can walk in to a county election office and ask for that. It's publicly available. The reason you need that information is to do things like if someone comes before the commission and says 100 people voted in this state in this election year, and we believe they were deceased at the time the ballots were cast. We can look at the voter rolls and say, well, those people weren't actually registered in that state at that time, so your claim is false, sir. You have to
But those secretaries of state are already saying they know that. They've done it within their own states, and they don't need you to certify their findings.
As a Secretary of State, I'm very familiar with what other states have done, and most states have not actually done an in-depth investigation of voter fraud in their state. Part of the reason we have in Kansas is, as you mentioned, we are fighting the ACLU in multiple court cases to keep our proof of citizenship requirement in place.
Right, and that's what is fueling the concern, right, is that that's who you are, and that's what you want, is to change the requirements to voting to require people to show proof of citizenship, and that they're concerned that that's what you're using this commission to do, to advance your agenda of what could be construed as voter suppression.
Well, you forgot to mention another thing, Chris, and that is it's a bipartisan commission. So it's a 6-5 Republican Democrats.
But you don't have a Democrat vice chair alongside you, should you?
The commission doesn't have two vice chairs.
Should it?
It's perfectly normal. I only have one vote. It doesn't really matter. The total number is what matters.
But it would help to show that it's more bipartisan, and it's not unusual to have two different party members at the top of a commission.
Put it this way, Chris, the most senior member on the commission is the longest-serving Secretary of State in America, Bill Gardner, a Democrat from New Hampshire. The commission has got some of the most respected experts on this issue and on election administration. But the bottom line is all we're doing is looking for facts. We'll put those facts on the table. You can look at them, Chris, and say, you know what, that doesn't prove anything. That's not why.
I think that data can be a tricky thing, and people can use it to make different suggestions that is a function of what they want as much as what the numbers show. I think that's the concern, especially with the information you're asking for. Again, it matters that experts who look at data analysis and voter registration efforts and are behind these studies that you quote, and by the way, as we both know, the study that you're pointing to, the guys who own the data came out and said this study is bogus for legal votes, that they should not have drawn these conclusions off my data. So the concern is you're not going to have the data to draw a conclusion except the one that you want to draw, which may feed your voter suppression efforts.
No, so you make a good point. There are studies out there that do sampling. So that one study was based on interviewing voters, calling them on the phone and asking them, are you a U.S. citizen? Yes, no. Did you vote in the 2008 election? Yes or no. Now, and then they sample, several thousand people, and they draw a conclusion from a sample. You're right. Experts will always dispute whether that sample is good enough to draw conclusions. This commission is going to be looking at real figures, real numbers, real voter rolls, and real cases, not just doing surveys. That's the big difference. Well, there's never been a nationwide commission to actually look at real cases of voter fraud, look at real instances. So, for example, the Pew Foundation has sampled and has concluded that there are more than 1.8 million deceased people on the voter rolls. And they acknowledge that that is probably a low estimate, but it's just an estimate. Wouldn't it be better if a commission were able to get some real hard data and not just make an estimate, but actually present some real numbers? That's what we're talking about here, is just presenting numbers so the American people can decide. And we can come back and have a discussion a year from now, and you can say, Chris, I draw different conclusions than you do. And that's fine, but let's at least put some numbers on the table. And there's so much debate about this issue. Why wouldn't we want more facts on the table?
Well, I don't know that there's any debate about whether or not 3 million people voted illegally in the election.
About the issue of voter fraud. No, about the issue of whether voter fraud affects elections.
Again, the reason I don't think the word a lot of debate over it is because we don't have any factual basis for saying that there is a problem with illegal voting in this country. It has never been seen as a scale that would be relevant on any level, except when one person, named President of the United States, Donald Trump, said it's why he lost.
Well, I've studied this issue a lot. I've told you the 128 cases in Kansas. Anytime you have a close election and if you have one or two non-citizens voting, it can swing that election. There was a case in North Kansas City, 2010 primary election, won by one vote for a state legislative seat on the Missouri side of the state line, Rizzo versus Royster. Mr. Rizzo won by one vote, but it was alleged that more than 50 Somali nationals voted in that election in sworn affidavits from the poll workers in that election.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the case.
So there are many cases where a close election can be swung by a few fraudulent votes. And I think as someone who's charged with administering elections and as someone who's an American and cares about our system, why wouldn't we want to minimize the chances of elections being stolen, of your vote being canceled by an illegal vote, or my vote being canceled by an illegal vote, someone who's not qualified or who's voting fraudulently for some reason. That's all we're trying to do.
We'll see what the commission comes up with. I'm just saying there are bigger concerns than illegal voting that this commission could be looking at, like Russian interference. So we'll see what you come up with, and we're always welcoming you on this show to discuss what matters.
All right, take care.
All right, Chris Kobach, thank you very much. There's a lot of news, including the latest in the battle over health care. Is there a way forward to make sure that your health care is safe? Let's get after it.
The White House says President Trump had a second undisclosed conversation with Vladimir Putin.
What the hell is Donald Trump's obsession with Vladimir Putin? Why won't he be straightforward about it?
It's a little extreme for us to somehow make this into a conspiracy.
We're also learning the identity of the eighth person in Don Jr.'s Trump Tower meeting.
It's very disturbing. It's taken us this long for this kind of information to come out.
We'll just let Obamacare fail.
That's just heartless. We're talking about real people here.
I regret that the effort to repeal and immediately replace will not be successful.
This is a real Mitch McConnell failure.
This is New Day with Chris Cuomo and Allison Camerata. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your new day. It is Wednesday, July 19th, 8 o'clock in the East. Up first, the White House downplaying reports that at the G20 summit, Mr. Trump and Vladimir Putin had a second undisclosed meeting. The president reportedly had an hour-long conversation with the adversary without any American officials present and no official record of what they discussed.
In just hours, President Trump is going to host all 52 Republican senators for lunch at the White House. This comes after the president said he wants to, quote, let Obamacare fail after the Senate health plan's humiliating defeat. We have it all covered for you. Let's begin with CNN's Joe Johns live at the White House. Joe.
Good morning, Chris. That first meeting, that 2-hour meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin caught the attention of the world, and now we know it wasn't the only time the two men spoke face to face. The White House confirming a second encounter at the G20 after reports of it surfaced in the news media.
President Trump lashing out, calling coverage of his previously undisclosed second meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin sick and alleging it's been made to look sinister. A senior White House official tells CNN the discussion on the sidelines of a G20 dinner lasted nearly an hour and no other U.S. officials were present. Ignoring protocol, the president relied on a Russian translator, leaving the U.S. with no official record of their conversation. The White House downplaying the second encounter, asserting the insinuation that the White House has tried to hide a second meeting as false, malicious, and absurd. This new revelation, the latest in a string of undisclosed meetings between Trump associates and Russians.
This kind of private meeting is virtually unprecedented in the diplomatic world. There seems to be a pattern of reckless or willful concealment of contacts with the Russians.
This meeting coming to light as CNN learns new details about the 8th person in attendance at the June 2016 meeting where top Trump aides hope to get damaging information about Hillary Clinton from the Russian government. That man, Ike Kaveladze, seen behind the president in 2013 in this exclusive video obtained by CNN, is a senior vice president at a real estate development company run by Russian oligarch Aras Agalarov, who has ties to Putin.
There was absolutely no conversation between either Agalarov and the Russian prosecutors or the Russian government about Hillary Clinton or the U.S. campaign ever. Didn't happen.
According to his attorney, Kaveladze believed he was attending a meeting as a translator for a Russian lawyer, despite the fact that she brought a translator with her. In 2000, Kaveladze was linked to U.S. bank accounts that came under congressional investigation for possible money laundering on behalf of Russian brokers. He was not charged.
This individual who's at least had a colorful past, if not a potentially criminal, it is very strange to me that this meeting that was supposed to be originally was related as 3 or 4 people about Russian adoptions.
Also this morning, CNN has confirmed that Russian lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, who met with Donald Trump Jr. last year, has offered to testify before the United States Senate in order to clear up what she has called hysteria over the situation. Meanwhile, Senator Dianne Feinstein of California has told CNN that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, has given the green light for 2 witnesses to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. That would be Donald Trump Jr. and the former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, though there's no clear note on exactly when that's going to happen. Back to you, Chris and Allison.
Thank you very much, Joe, for all the reporting. Let's bring in our panel now to discuss it. We have CNN political analyst David Gregory, senior Washington correspondent for Politico.com, Anna Palmer, and CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza. Chris, I know you've just written a piece for CNN.com saying that what President Trump appears to be doing with this second meeting with Putin, previously undisclosed, is a bait and switch. How is it, Chris Cillizza, that it has been more than 10 days, and in this age of all information all the time, we did not know that he had this possibly hour-long meeting with Vladimir Putin?
Well, one, because the White House didn't disclose it, but second, because, Allison, as you rightly note, all information all the time means you miss some things, right? I mean, it's just hard to see everything that is out there. But I do think what you're seeing here is really some classic Donald Trump misdirection, taking a story which is the White House, Donald Trump met with the Russian president with no other, or huddled with, or had a sidebar with, choose your word, at a G20 dinner with the Russian president with no U.S. translator and no other U.S. official present. We didn't know about it, as you rightly point out, for 10 days after it happened. And now Donald Trump is trying to turn the story into a media story, that the media is sick, his word, and that we're twisting things around. That it's not a media story. It's a story about a meeting we didn't know about prior with a foreign adversary that we know through our intelligence agencies meddled in the 2016 election. That's a story. The fact that the media is reporting on it is what we do. The fact that Donald Trump is trying to change the subject is what he does. It will work for a certain segment of people, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't change the facts here, and the facts here are very clear.
And what's fueling it is the unknown. Why do we care about the meeting with Putin? Because there's an odd softness to the disposition of the United States versus a known inimical government agent in Vladimir Putin. We just had the former head of the Office of Government Ethics say that Trump's lawyer didn't want the president to sign his financial disclosure form certifying that it was accurate. I mean, can you believe that? I mean, and with these questions about, well, what financing does he have from many Russian banks? Why did they want to seek out his son to talk about their money? And that's what talking about the Magnitsky Act, a best reading of what that meeting might have been about. That's about Putin's money being tied up. Why do they keep seeking out all these Trump folk?
We don't know what the financial relationship is between Donald Trump and his business and the Russian government.
We don't know. Even Walter Schaub just said that not only did the president not want to sign it, eventually he did sign it, but that after reviewing it, they still didn't know what they were dealing with.
And were there loans? I mean, is he leveraged by the Russians in terms of loans that the business has gotten? We don't know that. Put it back into the realm of substantive policy. It is dangerous to go into a meeting with an adversary where there's an agenda that we don't know about, particularly given this president and his administration's record. They have not been truthful about contacts with Russia in the campaign. There's more that's being revealed. It is suspicious when the president appears to be coddling Vladimir Putin as he did as a candidate and now as president. And the thin nature of his protest with regard to interference in the election amounted to, well, I asked him if he did it. He denied it twice. I brought it up a second time. What am I going to do? Get into a fist fight? It's not acceptable. So from a substantive point of view, look, I covered the White House. You want to know what the president's doing. Don't hold out. He was on Air Force One holding forth about everything he's doing in the White House and doesn't say, look, yeah, I met with him 2 hours and we had a separate conversation. What did you talk about? Just be accountable. Let's know what you talked about. And there's no question that he wants to develop and use personal chemistry in relationships. This is not the leader of Montenegro, right? This is Vladimir Putin. This is a dangerous game he's playing. He's not telling us about it.
And by the way, Anna, the world leaders who were at the G20 found this tete-a-tete publicly with President Trump and President Putin to be peculiar. Right. So here's what the New York Times reporting says. The dinner discussion caught the attention of other leaders around the table, some of whom later remarked privately on the odd spectacle of an American president seeming to single out the Russian leader for special attention at a summit meeting that included some of the United States' staunchest, oldest allies. What's the big picture here to you, Anna, in terms of where this relationship and this transparency and these Russian threads are?
I just think this is another example of Donald Trump taking a very different tack than his predecessors. And clearly you have a lot of allies who are concerned about it. And, you know, there's a lot of geopolitical things happening right now, North Korea, other things where the U.S. is going to need other foreign leaders on its side. And if they think that, you know, Donald Trump is buddying up to Vladimir Putin, that's not a good thing for those kind of relationships to move forward.
I mean, look. Just look at the checklist, Chris Cillizza, of how this all started and how we got to this point. You know, do you want to release your taxes? No. Why? Because I'm under audit. We don't even know if he is under audit. How about your financial disclosure? It's all there. It isn't all there. Now we know that his lawyer didn't want him to sign a disclosure form certifying that it was accurate. We know that at least 2 of the people at this meeting with Donald Jr.
You know, it's a concern.
Last year, protests and threats of boycotts erupted over a similar